In 2021, Japan produced a remake of the cult film Cube. Much like the original, a group of strangers must avoid traps as they desperately try to escape their mysterious new prison. Consider us curious to see what this Japanese version adds to the film. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter and joining me is Tara.
Konnichiwa.
Welcome. As a science fiction movie podcast, we talk about a sci-fi movie we watched. It's quite that simple. And to round off the Cube franchise, there is a fourth movie now, which was a shock to find out last year when we started doing these. But in 2021, Japan had a remake of Cube, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So obviously we did the entire original trilogy, and this is the new entry, which I was very curious to see what it would be. Obviously, you know, it is billed as a remake, so I expect it would probably have a lot of what the original movie was, but I figured they're probably going to put in their own flavor of things. There's probably going to be some unique elements. And lo and behold, there is. Most of them we can't really talk about until spoilers, but, you know, we'll get to that. So we'll start spoiler-free as we do. We'll give you a warning before we get into those. But, yeah, I mean, the premise is the same. Group of strangers wake up in a cube. It is nothing but cube-shaped rooms connected to other cube-shaped rooms. Some of them have traps in them. And that's it. It feels weird not to add anything extra onto it because it's the fourth one, but it is literally a remake of the first one, so it makes sense.
It could be somebody's first cube, also.
Well, I think it probably is for a lot of people in Japan. Like, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people who do watch American movies in Japan. In fact, I think they're quite big there. But I suspect that the whole point of this is that it is hitting an audience that doesn't know the first Cube and is just wowed by what the premise is. But there is definitely other things added, and there are definitely pivots away from what the original did. So we'll get into all that later, but we'll have to just have a quick spoiler-free section before we can talk about all that. So we'll get into it. So Tara, you were notably criminally unfair with the first film. You were very harsh, downright, I don't know, uncultured. A swine, one might say.
What?
The phrase is uncultured swine. I was being cute and splitting up. It was a joke. Some people get my humor, okay? Right? I know to you it's like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind with all the equations and the stuff on the wall. But to other people that was hilarious and they loved it, okay? They're writing their fan mail as we speak.
Yep. Everybody loves complex humor.
Alright, what did you think of the Cube remake?
I didn't like it very much. I mean, I thought it was kind of a pointless remake. I thought the characters were all pretty bland, or they do that thing where they just have a camera on someone's face while they're like shaking intensely for a long period of time and taking long breaths, and they're going off into their own world in their head, and you're like, oh, come on, this is going to take so long. I actually sped the movie up at the last like fourth of it. Like, I can't handle how long everything is taking. I thought it was a bit soulless and hollow and not very interesting, and the stuff that was remade was like fine. Like, it didn't really need, I don't know, it was so close to the original that it seemed kind of pointless to make, and yet the characters were so dull that I didn't think that there was a point to them either. I don't know. What do you think? That
was just a sea of negativity. I guess I was expecting something. I was expecting something more in the middle, I guess, but you came out swinging there.
I started in the middle, and then the movie by the end, I was just like, nope, not for me.
I don't know. I'm definitely more positive than you are, but it's definitely kind of a weird entry, because as it started, I was like, okay, the smartest thing this can do is not just have, I mean, I assumed they would have different names even if they did just do the exact same characters, but they don't do the same characters. They're different right? There's a different set of characters from the first one, and part of me thought, well, if it's a different set of characters, is it basically just a sequel at that point that's just kind of separate? But it does do enough things directly from the first movie that it is a remake. There's enough set piece moments where they take the thing that happened there and they do their take on it. Sometimes about as well, sometimes a bit worse. And then I will agree that, or I will disagree that it feels pointless in the sense that I do think it does put its own spin on it. Like, I think it pivots quite a lot once you get into, say, the back half, and it starts having a more direct idea of like what this place is and why they're here in a way that the original Cube doesn't. But it's not like what the Cube Zero movie did, where it, that gave you like a
that
more...
one was way more fun.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think this is better than the other two sequels. I think this is the second best Cube movie, so I'm going to fight you on that.
This is probably my least favorite.
I'm not surprised.
This is probably at the bottom for me.
I'm not surprised. At least you don't like it more than the first one. I mean, I'll take solace in that.
Yeah, I think Zero, the first one, the second one, and this one.
This is why you're fired. This is why you're so fired. You think Cube Zero is better than the original Cube? That's
yeah, because
madness.
it's entertaining. It's got cool characters in it who do fun stuff and are interesting.
Absolute mind-numbingness. Look, I think this movie actually reminded me of something bizarrely as it went on, and I won't say what it is until spoilers because it kind of talks about kind of where it goes. But it reminded me of a very specific thing as it was going on, where it was like, okay, it's taking this approach to what the Cube actually is, and I thought that's a little interesting. I kind of dig the vibe that gives. What I will say though, compare it to the original though, is that despite the fact that it has more of a character arc, I will say the characters are a little less interesting because when we did the first movie, we talked a lot about how the characters all kind of represent different types of people. And it was kind of like that, society in a bottle where, like, okay, you've got one person who represents the fascism, one person who represents the young, kind of bright, and, the one person who's the jaded employee, so on and so on. This kind of doesn't have that, and instead takes a completely different approach where it's, no. This is about a character's, like, arc and them getting over something from their past, right? And that's a valid thing to do as well, but I do think inherently half the characters in this don't feel as memorable to me as the characters in the original. Despite the fact that the acting wasn't amazing in the original, I think those characters hold up better in my memory than these characters will.
Yeah, those characters all had a purpose, whereas these ones do not. These ones are just like, I don't know, you kind of like, you have archetypal characters, I suppose, in this, and the ones that you expect are going to, like, not really contribute anything except to our main character, like, do. And that's it. Like, that's their only purpose, is just to serve the main character. And it's like, well, why are they there then? Like, what is the point of this?
I think that is actually just a point to make there. Something you said there is that there is a main character, which is different from the original Cube. Cube, I wouldn't say there's any one person who feels like the main character. Yeah, I suppose. Because I think it's a good point, because the first movie, it just kind of shifts between this ensemble, and there's maybe a few that feel more prominent than the others, but this movie absolutely does have a main character. There's definitely, Goto is the main character of this movie. It is his story by and large.
Yeah.
So that is, again, it's a difference from that movie. So, I think it's worth pointing that out, because it is a big difference from a script writing perspective.
Sure. His character journey and, like, the flashbacks we get of his life, I found a little bit, I don't know. I didn't think that it was, I don't know, anything that he should be punished for, like, we don't really know why he's in the cube. They have these speculations, and, like, one of the things is just what we learn about in his flashbacks that we get, and I felt that was a bit over dramatic and not very satisfying as a reason for why he's in the cube. And the journey that he goes through, I didn't really enjoy. I found it kind of predictable, but also, like, not just that, but so the characters are different than the first film. but the plot points are like the exact same thing, like the beat for beat almost. Like things happen, and you're like, okay, I've seen this movie already. Like that's where the remake thing comes in.
Well,
but
for about half of it, it changes quite a bit in the second half.
Maybe, I mean, not like that much.
You can't, no, it does. You can't argue that. It absolutely does. There's huge differences once you get to that second half.
I don't think so. Like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I remember this, and like, well, obviously they have to go here because everything else has been the same. Well, you can't talk about it without going into spoilers.
Yeah, I know, but it's so weird you're fighting me on this because no, there's definitely huge differences in the second half of the movie. There's ideas they still use.
Not enough that weren't like that didn't make it the plot predictable.
Well, that's a weird. I mean, I hate defining a movie's plot as predictable or not, because by and large, if it's predictable, it can often mean that it's just set up well, that you can see where it's going because they've actually planted the seeds properly. Not that I'm necessarily disagreeing that there's elements of this that aren't very, very telegraphed. I just think that's a weird thing to say when you're like, oh, well, there's enough of the original movie still in there, I can still see where it was going.
Yeah.
It's like, even if it's not a remake, like if you're watching like Friday the 13th Part 4 and you're like, you know, I think Jason's going to kill a lot of these people. I've just got a sneaking suspicion. They're not doing anything different here.
Well, there's no Jason in this, but, you know, there are people that we suspect maybe turn into a killer.
I mean, you're just saying that because someone did that in the first movie, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do. Like, honestly, when I looked up, I didn't know what anyone thought of this movie, and I was surprised to see it had a 4.5 on IMDb when I opened it up before the start of the review, because that is very harsh. Like, that is like Mimic 3 kind of levels of rating, and that is absurd. This movie is not at that level, right? I don't think it's like a...
It's definitely... I would think, like, when you said there was a modern-day Japanese remake of Cube, I mean, weren't you a little bit excited about, like, the possibilities of that? And I found the film to be kind of toothless, and, you know, a lot of the gore things were just really backed out on, and a lot of the risk that characters could take aren't taken because, like, we don't want this character to die or something, so it's... Or, like, I don't know, like, nothing is... There's no brutality in this that I felt in the first film that I was really looking forward to in the Japanese remake of Cube.
I mean, I guess I can kind of get what you're saying there, but I think there's some interesting ideas that it does kind of put forth, but I can't talk about them until spoilers. Any of the things that I think did make this a little bit interesting as a new version of Cube, which is not as good as the first movie. Like, I think it's a decent movie. I don't think it's a great movie or even like a really good movie. I think, but I had a decent enough time watching it. I didn't think it dragged on. I thought it went in at a decent pace. There was some moments in there that I quite enjoyed, particularly in the second half when it started to really change and do things a little bit differently. For me, I thought this was easily better than 2 or 0. I like... For whatever reason, this franchise is something we just disagree on with every single movie. In fact, Cube 2 might be the closest we have been to agreeing on any of these entries by the sounds of it thus far. But I suspect that the negative ratings online, though, are more from just people who are mad that it was a remake. Because even if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, there's not enough reviews for it to have a Rotten Tomatoes score. But the 2 critic reviews that are there are both positive, but the audience scores at like 22%. And I feel like there's people who are just mad that a movie they like got remade, and they've probably not even seen the movie in some cases. That just kind of happens.
Yeah, I mean, that happens.
And like, don't get me wrong, this did not need to exist, right? And Cube, the original, stands on its own. It doesn't need sequels. It doesn't need a remake. It doesn't need any of those things. And in the future, when I want to watch Cube, I'll watch the original movie. But partly because this is obviously taking a lot from that first one, this is definitely the one that's the closest to feeling like the original. Because Cube 2 felt like this weird clinical thing that was very, very different. Cube 0 was kind of going for the vibe, but it was so focused on other things that it felt like an afterthought. This at least was like, okay, we're doing Cube again, But of course, that also comes with the, oh, there's the boot come flying, and I guess we're doing the boot, and oh, we're doing the numbers, we're doing the things that Cube 1 did. That makes sense. And I wasn't sure how far they were going to go with some of that stuff, and like, are we going to do the same beats with that? And they kind of did to a point. They kind of did a little shake up here or there with some of the details, but nothing super different. But like I say, all the things that it does change are all like super spoilery, especially for people who have seen Cube and are interested in this remake. I feel like the one thing we could spoil for them is what's different about it, because all the stuff that's different is not in the core concept, it's in all the stuff that it starts to do later on. It reveals some more things, and it does some things. Yeah, if you're a Cube fan, I feel like telling you any of the things that this does differently, other than the fact that it's different characters, is the spoilers that you don't want. So I would say it's worth a watch. I think I got enough out of it that I'm glad I watched it to see like a different take on the idea. And I'm actually I'm looking forward to talking about some of those different ideas. But I do think the internet, and clearly by extension Tara, is being a bit in the harsh side.
Maybe. I just didn't find it to be entertaining enough.
I think you were expecting like them to go into a cube and like a Takashi Miike film like would play out when the trap starts.
Maybe.
Nipples being ripped off and
oh yeah,
all sorts.
I told you, yeah, I want brutality in my Japanese cube.
Okay. Well, I think we'll give the spoiler warning, because I feel like at this point all we can do is dance around everything that's actually interesting to talk about. Alright, so spoilers then. We said the setup's pretty simple. It's the same as the original Cube. They wake up and they're in the jumpsuits. Much like the original, they do remember who they are. Their memories aren't wiped, but much like the original, they don't know how they got here. They briefly talk about, where they were before they came here. Not as much as the original, though. They definitely pivoted away from that a bit more in this one, where I think they avoided a lot of the same conversations. Like, there was a lot of conversations in the original movie about who built this place, and is it a conspiracy, and is it this, is it that, and then the differing opinions starting to argue about it. That wasn't really a thing here. They kind of dodged that, either maybe because they wanted it to be different, or maybe just because whoever was making this wasn't as interested in that. But that definitely at least made it feel like it wasn't trying to do the same social commentary as the original, which I think to be fair is a negative overall, but I at least appreciate that they were trying something different, at least with that.
Yeah, I think it makes it less interesting, because that's the good part in Cube is I'm not really a huge fan of it already, but the big like holistic approach of looking at the film as a big old allegory is more fun than actually the movie is for me. So, but you remove that in this, and you're just following this one guy who is scared, for the most part, and all the characters, like, they keep things really close to the chest, and maybe it is to avoid, conversations from the first film, but at the same time, I'm like, well, everyone's just kind of not talking to each other, and people are asking questions and no one's giving any answers, and I find that frustrating in films a lot when people just ignore characters constantly. I'm like, just answer a freaking question.
I mean,
people don't act this way.
I agree to a point, but I do think the movie gives some hints for some of them, enough that I actually built like a I had like a solid feeling of what the movie was trying to do, where the main character Goto clearly has this traumatic incident in his past, which you see like quick glimpses of, where he had an abusive father who abused his brother, and his brother ended up committing suicide. That's what we see in the flashbacks, and he not only failed to save him, but he almost said the wrong things, right? When his brother was on the ledge of the roof, he basically says, toughen up, like, I got through it, you should too. He wasn't, sympathetic or anything like that. It's effectively maybe indicating that he's kind of becoming like his father, like his father's treatment of him is kind of starting to turn him into his father at this point. For me, the little hints of the other characters, particularly, so you've got the one who's like the the smart one, who's like the one who's using the boots in the first place, who doesn't really have a parallel in the original movie. I thought he might be like a mix of the cop plus the escape artist, but he actually ends up being kind of just a different thing entirely. Ultimately, he's kind of this like heroic, quiet guy who ultimately sacrifices himself.
He's just almost like an older brother figure to our lead guy.
Yeah, kinda. But he says a couple of things that imply he's got regrets. The old man has a speech at one point. Obviously, there's another character who turns out to just be a psychotic serial killer, so we'll talk about him later. But the vibe I was getting from this, bizarrely, as it went on, and it was becoming this kind of like, they're all here because of something like this, I was getting a lot of Silent Hill in this movie. And that was kind of a weird realization as it was going on, how much Silent Hill, particularly Silent Hill 2, because the whole idea of Silent Hill is that it's this place that you go to when you've got this trauma and guilt over something that you can't get over. I'm going to spoil the ending of Silent Hill 2, the video game here, okay? For anyone who doesn't want to know the ending of Silent Hill 2, I'm about to drop it on you. But
I'm never going to play it.
Yeah. You find out at the end of that movie, because you've been looking, the character you're playing as has been looking for his wife, who died years ago, is that the twist is that you killed your wife. Like, the character killed his wife. And the reason why he's in Silent Hill is because he can't live with the memory and the guilt of this. And it's all about kind of unpacking those demons and sort of finding like out, you know, independent. I mean, it's a game and there's multiple endings, so the ending can be either be your character commits suicide, which is insane that can be the ending of the game, or it can be something a bit more hopeful where maybe you can sort of learn to move on and do something else. And it was context. It wasn't like he just got mad and killed her. She was like sick and he chose to, you know, end her life kind of thing. It was, you know, there was context to it. But I was getting those vibes from this, especially when as the movie went on, it started to like, be clear that some body or presence or entity was reacting to what they were doing in the cube. There's moments in this, and this is very unlike the first movie, where a room that wasn't trapped will become trapped because they don't like that the characters are seeing something that a previous team have drawn in the wall, and it starts messing with things. And then later on, the lights in the room start to change based on the mood that's happening, like in the conversation. And when they get to near the edge of the cube, there's a room that scans the main guy Goto and plays out his flashback for him to see, and the others that are with him see it as well. And I'm like, I'm getting such Silent Hill vibes, but this is all about him getting over this trauma. And I'm not saying it's as good as Silent Hill 2, but I thought it was a very interesting place to take a Cube movie, because a lot of what we talk about in the first Cube is like, okay, what is this place? Who built it? And we loved how ambiguous that first movie was. It's like, you know, I hate that 3 or 0, I should say, especially tries to sort of pin it down into this like political stuff. I loved it, but I love that it could be aliens, it could be the government, it could be an experiment, it could be something else, it, you know, could be a Black Mirror style thing. This, while it gives a more concrete kind of, not answer, but like a direction and an answer might be, which is it's more of this ethereal, I wouldn't say purgatory, that you might be able to fight your way out of based on if you can grow from whatever you've done. But especially since like whenever you get a glimpse of the operating system, it looks kind of sci-fi. It looks like, oh, this feels like aliens have built this thing because of all the stars I'm seeing and the,
it looks like
the weird
AI
hologram of the cube that's spinning around. Yeah, it looks like there's, yeah, but like you could totally tell me that whoever built this place for these people to like do what they're doing and getting over their trauma is, like, I guess I'm saying it
get
felt
over
a bit
your
more,
trauma or die.
it's a little jigsaw when you put it that way. But it kind of felt,
well,
I
they've
guess
always kind of had a Saw vibe to them.
I don't know if I agree with that, but for me, this felt like it had an ethereal kind of vibe in a way that was a little bit different to the other movies. And I'm not saying I prefer it, but I at least appreciated that it was doing something a little bit different, and it wasn't like, it felt less lame to me than anything Cube Zero tried to say about like what the cube was. And I appreciated that. And Tara's scoffing at me because she loves Cube Zero for some stupid reason. But
I don't love Cube Zero, but I like Cube Zero because it's entertaining and it's fun and it tries to do something that is more interesting. This is just like, oh, it's trauma, and now we can project your trauma onto one of the walls for some reason. I didn't like that.
Okay.
It just turned into like a movie screen so that everyone could watch, and like, why are these people here still? Like, why are the other two people there at that point? Oh.
Because they came in the room with them.
Yeah. And that's it. That's their only reason for being there, is because one's a kid and one's a woman. And he's like, well, we can't, they have to like live, obviously. Our guy has to get over his trauma and save these two, because they're the woman and child, and it makes us like him.
Well, okay, I think that's been really weird and dismissive for two reasons. One, the kid's very important as a character. He's the second most important character, because the whole point is the kid is the one who's going to actually learn from this and get out, right? And the whole point is that the kid's a second chance for our main character to save a little brother character, right? This is, you know, like Ripley had Newt after the loss of her daughter. This is him getting another chance to save his little brother. That's who this character is. So that's important in that sense. And the woman, I did have some weird feelings about this character throughout the movie, because I kind of kept noticing how little, like, every other character had a personality. Every other character, you might not think they were important, but they all had something. I could tell you something about all of them. They all had a thing. She just kind of stood around and occasionally asked a question, and I thought, this is really weird, and like, is this just misogynistic, how little this woman character has to do? And this doesn't excuse that per se, but like right at the very end, it turns around and pulls like a little, oh no, she wasn't really one of them the entire time. So, you know, when you say, oh, she has to be there in the room with them because she's the woman, I'm like, well, yeah, but she's not a woman. Like, the end of the movie makes it clear she is not a woman.
Well, I mean, when you watch the movie, though, it's very much like, I don't know, it just seems to project exactly who's going to survive, because it seems basic that way.
No, that's a fair critique, but I'm picking apart specifically what you said about that scene, because that character turns out to be like an avatar for the operating system that runs this place, or an android that helps with running this place. But because, you know, at the end of the movie, she goes and meets the next team. She goes and meets the next group of characters and says, you know, hello, who are you all?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the movie ends. But she drops the act when, you know, when they get to the exit and the kid's about to step out, and she's like, hey, you know, are you willing to go back there even if nothing's changed? And the kid says, I'm the one who needs to change. And it's like he's learned something, and he walks off into the light. You know what? I think if nothing else, I appreciate this was actually kind of a happy ending where, oh, this kid actually is getting to go back to the real world. He's not just going to be shot in the head the second he steps outside the cube, because no one can know this place exists. Like, I kind of appreciated that optimism.
You don't know that. You haven't watched the third Japanese cube movie
Shut
yet.
up. No. I appreciated that optimism, and maybe it's just because we did the sequels recently, and I just kind of felt like they were so just, like, dour in a very uninteresting way. At least this had, like, it had a bit of hope at the end. It had a bit of hope that, you know, this, like, the sacrifice of the other characters has saved this kid, and this kid who looks like he's been abused as well, which does beg the question as to exactly why he's in here. You know, like, did he do something as well that he's got trauma over? He's very quiet, of course. He never talks for a lot of the movie until he opens up a little bit. So,
Yeah. I don't know. Everyone who's in the cube seems to just service Goto and his story. It doesn't really seem like it's, I don't know. I just am disappointed that the allegory thing seems to be gone. Instead, there's just a replacement, like, oh, like an older brother who's willing to sacrifice himself to save me when I'm in trouble, and another version of my younger brother that I can save, and woman, and old man who's like the opposite of the kid, or what the kid might turn into or something if he stays on the same track, and serial killer.
I mean, yeah, but like, you're just sort of listing them off, though. You're being a bit dismissive in terms of, like, you know, if you meet them on the movie's terms,
also boring.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm actually trying to analyze the characters here and have a conversation about them, but we can't go anywhere if you're just going to say they're boring and leave it at that.
Okay.
That wasn't an invitation to just say that and leave it at that.
Well, okay. Well, who do you want to talk about?
Well, the old man represents, he's this jaded, cynical asshole. Like, he's nice enough when he thinks he's just being rescued when they first meet him. And then he's like, wait, this isn't a rescue team? Like, you're all in here with me, like I am, and we have to figure a way out. And then he just keeps complaining about the younger characters throughout the course of the movie. And ultimately meets I will say this. I think that, so he's the victim of the killer, right? So the killer is the seemingly very friendly guy named Ochi, who's the first one who really talks to anyone at the start. And he turns out to have a bit of a tick, and then eventually when he's left alone with the homeless man, or not the homeless man, sorry, the old man, not the homeless man, the old man, and they get separated.
Maybe they're all homeless, yeah.
They get separated because these bars come up in the middle. It's like the cube wants to separate them. And the old man's alone with Ochi, and because the old man's saying, hey, I hate people like you who blame the world for everything, which, is kind of what the ending relates to as well, when the kid says, no, it's me that needs to change, not the world. I actually thought the way he dies was quite good and was a more, like, visceral death than... because I think the one thing you can say about this remake versus that original is that this does clearly have a bit more money in it. And something as simple as these death scenes in the traps, for the most part, do look better. They might not necessarily be as exciting, because I think the example we'll get to is the quiet room. Like, we'll talk about that and how it compares to the original. But I thought that death was good. I also thought it was set up kind of nice, because there was this little moment, like, before it came back to them, there was a really creepy visual where the camera sort of, like, looked up as the old man was, like, looking at the door going down the way, and the Ochi was behind him, just sort of crouched, and he was smiling really creepily in the background, and I thought that was a really cool shot. I don't think this has the depth of the original movie, but I don't know, I can't dismiss it as just boring, because I don't think it was boring.
Okay, maybe I'm being dismissive, but I genuinely, like, had to turn the speed up on the film, because I thought things were just getting way too drawn out with, like, slow motion shots, and, like, we're going to stay on this character's reaction for way too long. And I don't know, I just found it was kind of like the end of Snowpiercer, where I'm like, come on already. Like, I already know where this is going. Just speed up. I just want it to end now, or at least the scene to end.
I mean, I just never felt that. I mean, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with the complaint that they over embellish on, like, some of those moments, but I don't think it ever got to the point where I was, like, frustrated. I was like, because the movie's only like an hour and 45. It's not, it's not like I'm watching this 2.5-hour movie. I'm like, that should be at least half an hour shorter. It's not like that at all.
It felt pretty long to me, but I mean, hour and 45 is not short.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the things they keep from the original movie. They keep the numbers. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, I always thought in the original movie, the doors with the prime numbers were the safe ones, and not the other way around.
I remember also, but it's been a while since we watched it. I only saw it the one time.
Yeah, I always remembered that being the case, so it's not a big change if they changed it. Although, there's less... Like, the further you go up the numbers, I would say there's a lot less non-prime numbers, so it makes sense that the prime numbers are the trap rooms from a numerical standpoint, I guess. So, fair enough. Like, I have no complaints about that change, necessarily. Obviously, they use the boots to check things. Eventually, they test the boot in a room where it doesn't work. Which is interesting, because I thought that trap was kind of interesting, because it was like a bunch of spinning blades that come down from the top. So they do have time to escape, but it's an interesting thing where it doesn't come on until they're all in the room. And, they're all in jeopardy.
The interesting thing I thought about it for it was that, like, all the traps have something that would activate it, so people know not to enter the room if they're being smart. But this one seemed to have a delay to where it will activate after everybody gets in, and then the doors close. So I thought it was interesting that, okay, it's a trapped room, but it's not an inescapable room. Like, there's still a hatch that they can go through at the bottom. Yeah. Which I was relieved by, not just because, literally every character's in there, but also, like, I don't think that would be fair Like, I think there still should be a fairness to the traps. You know?
Unlike Jigsaw, there's still a fairness to it. Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting scene because part of me thought, because it's like maybe 25 minutes, 30 minutes in, and I thought, are they going to be ballsy and like kill off the entire team and start a new squad? They didn't, obviously, but I thought, oh, maybe they're going to do something really wacky here. Maybe it's more like an anthology where it's like 3 different groups. So, okay, the first group fail miserably and all die together, kind of thing. But they do keep the quiet room, and I was wondering if they're going to keep this, which in the original was that great scene, maybe the best scene in the whole movie, is they have to drop down through a room where there's a trap, because they get to a point where every single door leads to a trap room, so it's like, what do we do now? Except go back. And they have to go through this room where the trap is activated by sound. But of course, not only is it going to be difficult because they might drop something, or they have to be careful to move slowly and quietly, but there's the one character who's mentally disabled who they can't predict, and he doesn't understand that he has to be quiet necessarily. And it's this great...
So they have to also go in through the bottom and the top also, so like, didn't that also add an extra element of
no,
people might get scared?
They come down from the top and go down,
so when they enter the silent room, they have to like monkey bar across and stuff, so there's an extra element of someone could fall or drop something.
And of course, they do have the silent room here, right? And it's a different trap, though. This one is more like a line of razor blades that are really thin that kind of come across the room, which is cool. I mean, the traps all look pretty good for the most part. But I did think this was much weaker than the original because those 2 things I mentioned. One, this isn't coming down from the top, so it's just kind of like going to the left. It's a bit easier. And 2, because we don't have the character who is unpredictable, it didn't have that same tension. Obviously, I expected something to happen to trigger the traps, but it was just something as simple as, oh no, the boot the one guy was carrying fell into the floor, and there's kind of like a slow like reach to grab. It's okay for what it is on its own, but because I've seen the original Cube, I'm like, this is nothing compared to that scene. That was a way better orchestrated scene. So I think that one's definitely worth pointing out as a net negative compared to the original.
No, I would agree.
Other traps though, the opening trap, they do an opening kill like the first movie, but instead of a grid, it's these like big square like tubes that come out the wall, but notably it cuts out like a cube of flesh in the guy's stomach. So you see like the bit of the shirt that's cut like fall first, and then you just see this big honking cube of flesh just fall to the floor.
Get it? Because it's cubed.
Because it's a cube. It's a cubed bit of meat. It's very, very good. Very way. Yes. Did you enjoy the laser room where it's like they get a little bit of a warning because the targeting system kind of like locks on, and then the lasers go to hit? This is actually where the sort of smart guy dies because he kind of saves both Goto and the kid.
I thought they just did it a little too many times to where I was like, okay, again, I kind of got over it. Because they were like, okay, I'm going to go in and save the kid. And now the kid's got to save me. And now I got to save the kid again. And now another guy comes in and saves me. And now we got to both save the kid. And now, I don't know. Like, it was just done too many. It was too repetitive.
That's fair. I think the important part, of course, is that Goto makes the choice to try and save him, right? Because he hesitated before. And this is a big moment that he's going to actually try and save him. And it's maybe a big moment as well for the smart guy. But no, I don't disagree that maybe there's I think just him saving the kid and then the smart guy saving them and getting hit with the third laser beam would have been probably rule of threes. You do the first one where the kid gets saved, the second one where Goto gets saved, and then the third one is the one that kills the guy. Instead, it's like the fifth one, like they keep dodging it for a while. So I think that's fair. Yeah. Those were the memorable traps, I thought. I don't know if there's any other ones that I want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there really wasn't too much death by traps in this, so like we didn't really get any good ones.
Oh yeah, I don't think I said I liked the kill of the killer killing the old man, but I don't think I mentioned that it's when the guy's got his head looking down through the door, where the killer just grabs the door and starts ramming it into his neck,
like the hatch. Yeah.
Because it's a slidey thing, so he's just sliding it into his face over and over again. I mean, I enjoyed that, but you're right, it's not a trap death. It's a little bit different. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I mean, and it's also just kind of implied brutality. We really don't see too much.
you see the blood spatter. I think the performance on the killer's face is what I was enjoying. His blood was spattering up to him. But I don't know. I got a kick out of that. I think maybe they should have actually had a bit more with him after, because eventually he rejoins the other group, and the kid's immediately suspicious that he's like done something bad. And I like that because it kind of implied that he recognizes him as an abuser, because he's an abused kid, and he can see the signs that this is a guy he can't trust. But I almost wish they had more like of this, where so instead of the first movie where someone goes crazy towards the end, okay, you reveal that someone here is already just a psychopath. That's fine, but it would almost been nice to like know that for like 2/3 of the movie, where you're like, oh, when are they going to strike?
Yeah.
When are they going to do something? Kind of thing.
It also like that character has a much better payoff in the original, because he starts off as somebody that you want to trust, because he's in a, like he says he's a cop, you know, he's taking charge, and it's not until throughout the movie where you realize he's not really helping. He's just like taking the role of leader, and actually other people are better at being leaders than he is and getting more done and saving more lives, to where he starts to break. And even though his performance is not great, it's still excuse me, it makes sense in the context of the film of who he represents, that that he would be the one that cracks.
Yeah,
and you see all the things that are adding up. This one is just like, oh, like the nice meat guy from the beginning is actually a serial killer twist, instead of, you know, having to build up to something.
Yeah, I mean, in the first film, it was like part of the social commentary that who he was supposed to be and then what he actually is was a big part of it. Whereas here, it's more just, he's like timid and likable, kinda, and then, oh no, he's actually a complete raging psychopath. It made me think a little bit, of all things, of Predators, the Topher Grace character. It made me think of him a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, which is also an unsatisfying character.
Yeah. That said, though, I do think this guy was a better actor in this movie than Topher Grace was in that.
Oh, he's probably a better actor than the guy from the first movie, also.
Oh, sure. Like you just want to, you just love shitting on that performance, though. You're taking every opportunity to shit on him.
Come on,
the audio listeners, the audio listeners don't see this, but Tara's doing an impression of his eyes right now. It's it's something. It's just some other little things that were different, and one of this was almost like fixing a plot hole. Is so in the original, eventually you find out that the cubes are moving, or at least some of them are moving, and it was. I remember listening to the commentary track and the director acknowledging, yeah, I mean, scientifically there has to be a lot more like empty spaces for this to actually function, and this movie actually deals with that, because basically what happens is that every so often some of the hatches just won't open, and I think you're meant to read that as whenever the hatch won't open, it's because there's not a cube on the other side, so it just won't open. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of neat. They actually kind of put a little bit of thought into that so that it works a little bit better. And you even see when you
you can see it too.
When you get the scene where they're like sticking their head out of the edge, and that was in the original as well, but here you actually see another cube moving around, and they can see it, and they even see the exit, which you see at the end of the movie, but they don't see it in advance in that original movie. That's something that only happens in this one. But
yeah, and when they are actually going through the exit cube where the elevator's going up, and we get an outside perspective as an audience, you can see where there's a lot of gaps in the cube to where it looks like there's more than one of them. So like more than one cube even. It's just going through a bunch of Borg ships.
kind of like that, yeah. Because when you see the operating system or whatever it is that it cuts to a couple times where it's like making a choice of what to do to them, like it does look like there is more than one, like when I say more than one cube, I mean more than one overall cube, not just obviously the individual rooms. But yeah, I think these little things that it did are kind of interesting. It's the sort of thing where it's a bit more polished as a movie because it has more money, and the sets look a bit more expensive, the effects look a bit better, typically. There is some sort of obvious CG here or there, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's you know, looking like a $100 million production or anything like that. But obviously what it doesn't have though is it doesn't have the same writing. It doesn't have the same social commentary that first film did. And obviously as well, like if you've seen the original movie, like for me, this movie was its least interesting when it was just like them discovering the numbers. And that's one of the reasons why I would say this is absolutely a remake, is even as much as it changes, as much as it does different things, those moments where they're discovering numbers or they're testing things with a boot or they're, you know, doing certain things, or the quiet room like the first movie, is that it takes so many things from the first movie and doesn't put a spin on them. Like it's presenting them as if this is the first time the audience is hearing about this, whereas if it was a sequel and it was intended to be for people who had seen that already, they'd still have the characters figure it out, but they would do it in a way that was more maybe shorthand because the audience already knows it, or they would maybe put a spin on it and say, hey, things are different now because of this, and that's something.
Yeah, it would feel like Cube 2 or something. Yeah.
So I think there's enough differences to make it an interesting watch for people who like Cube, but at the same time, it is definitely still a remake, despite all the things that are different. But I enjoyed seeing the different things that it did with the premise. It is a little bit overly melodramatic at times, but given that we've said some of the performances in the original movie, even though the social commentary is great, aren't all amazing. Having the emotional close-ups of the lead actor as he's like, crying about his dead brother or whatever, to me that just kind of feels like, this is part of the Cube experience, is someone overacting. Like this is just,
I suppose
this is part of the charm of this whole thing. So yeah.
Apparently the lead actor was in that film Drive My Car, which I heard was really great.
Oh, okay. That was a think of another difference, is that they kind of imply the rooms are moving like almost at the start, like because they can hear it. And they don't know what it is, but the lights kind of flash and they can hear a rumble, and I'm like, oh, they're just straight up setting up right now that like there's movement going on, and they don't quite figure out till later like what it is. But if you've seen the original Cube, you're like, oh shit, they're doing that right away. Like they're just saying, hey, this is a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like, you mentioned it at the beginning, but I did like when the colors changed because of the severity of the situation that someone was in. When they were in a safe room and suddenly it turns red, and you're like, oh, well, I mean, it's weird that it's doing that unless it is, like you said, the situation where it's just, it's there to, I don't know, like the rooms are actually changing in order to elevate the danger of the main character or something when it just decides to. But I did like from a direction point of like, things are heating up in here, so we're just going to change the color to a warmer palette and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's completely random, actually. I think because the first time it does something where it makes a room into a trap room, it's because they're seeing something that clearly whoever runs this place doesn't want them to, because it's going to make it too easy, as Tara's pets wreck the room.
He's just trying to get inside.
And then later on, when it separates them at the bars, it specifically separates the old man and the serial killer away from our main character and the kid. And I think that's maybe because it knows they're about to go into the room with the flashback, and maybe at this point it's decided that these other characters, like, there's no hope for them. Like, the ones who might actually learn something from this are Goto and the kid. So we're separating them from the more dangerous people in here. I mean, maybe that's not a great reason for it, but like I think that's kind of the logic behind it, is that it's making a choice about who's going to see that moment in there.
So you're saying that the Cube has determined that those people don't deserve to survive, and so that's why they're separated.
Kinda, yeah, kinda. Yeah, like
even the old man.
Yeah, I mean,
he kind of admits that he was a bad person, and that's a little bit of an arc, at least going through all this stuff.
That's true. He does at least acknowledge that he is kind of a piece of shit, but and maybe that's just why you feel a little sympathy for him when he gets his head bashed in by, by Ochi. Ochi, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's there. I think that's fine. I mean, whether you want to read this as the Cube itself is sentient, or there's like a monitoring, body of whether it's aliens, people.
The woman is, right? So.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if the woman is the is she the one running the cube, or is she just like a robot?
She's the person in the escape room who you can go to and be like, "We need a hint."
Kinda, yeah.
We're running out of time.
Yeah, because I cannot tell you. Like, it was literally like minutes before that scene where she talks to the kid at the end that reveals that she's not just a person; she's actually something else. But right before that, I was thinking, man, this character. Because it's because see the scene before then, right, where. So we get our big showdown where the kid's telling Goto, hey, I think Ochi did something to the old man. I don't think we can trust him. And then Ochi starts snapping and, like, you know, attacks Goto and injures him. So Goto's down. Ochi's got his foot on his chest. He's pushed the kid away. And the kid's screaming. Goto's screaming at him. And this whole time I'm thinking, the woman just went into the cube next door and the door's still open. Why is she not coming back in? Why is she not coming in to help or find out what's going on? She's just not reacting. And then at the end of the scene, she's just in that other room and the kid goes to her when he's escaping. And I'm like, why is this character just so, like, removed from everything? But then the ending kind of makes sense. Oh, she's a passive observer who's working. Either she runs the cube or she's working for the cube or whatever it may be. But she's in there, you know, in a different capacity. So it kind of made sense at that point. But before that moment, I was like, why is this character so, like, underwritten and just, like, forgotten about at points? It was weird. But anyway,
I did find it. Yeah, I also found it frustrating. I was kind of rolling my eyes at the character just because I didn't think that she was contributing much. Just there to be a woman to be saved at, you know, so I'm glad they did something at the end for it, but.
Yeah, but except that part is wrong, though, because she never needed to be saved. She was never in any danger. that's what we find out. I did like this trap that sort of, like, triggers in this room. It's not a trap room to begin with. Well, actually, it's interesting now that I say that, because Ochi does, like, he kind of lies to them and says there's no prime numbers, and they all jump in without looking. I thought no one's going to glance at it and see if there's, like, at least an odd number to think maybe it could be a prime number. But
yeah, I thought that was strange too.
But they all jump in, and he's like, oh, this is crazy. It's just after the kid's been talking to Goto, and he's like, there's no trap, and yet it was a prime number. And then, of course, the trap does eventually spring. And I was wondering, like, unless the cube's just choosing to activate it because of what's happening, if it's not that, then I was like, okay, what triggered it then? Is it the amount of, like, rage? Is it the amount of fear in the room that's triggering it? Like, is that what it's sensing? Because, I mean, at this point, like, this thing's so sci-fi that, like, yeah, you can tell me it senses that. Why not? Like, who cares? Like, I can go with that. But it's like this... I guess I'll call it, like, a biomechanical tree that sprouts through Ochi the Killer, where... Not Ichi the Killer. Ochi the Killer. But it's like these metal, like, branches that kind of, like, sprout out of him, and then they keep growing out of him. I thought that was a visual, at least, that I'm going to remember for a little while.
Yeah, that was an interesting looking trap for sure, and that is where we lose our main character as well. So it's a little sad that that's a thing that he had to experience, and instead of, you know, escaping. But I mean, there is kind of a tag at the end where he's still alive, although I don't know why he would want to be.
That's such a weird statement. What do you mean, why he'd want to be?
Because he's still trapped in the cube, and he's like, you know, all cut up and stuff, and
yeah, but you say that as if he was given a yes and no choice, where it was like, here, hit green for yes, I want to be alive in here, and red for no. He just happened to survive.
I know, but, like, at the same time, it's like maybe you would have wanted to be killed instantly rather than, like, keep going in the cube as, like, someone who's horribly maimed.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, I think it's meant to be a hopeful little tag, because it's like, no, he knows how to get out now, so he might actually stand a chance. If he's still got the physical strength, he might actually be able to do it.
Maybe. I thought, I don't know. I didn't see it as a hopeful ending. I was like, oh, he didn't make it, and he's just injured until the cube kills him.
No, it's definitely meant to be hopeful, because he kind of sacrifices himself to save the kid because the cube's moving, which I thought, I was waiting for it the whole movie. I bet this movie was going to do the thing where the doors open and we see the other cube move, like an elevator. I was like, we're definitely going to see that. And I thought it was going to decapitate someone. It didn't
Yeah,
do
I thought
that.
someone was going to get cut.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but it did have this thing where the kid gets through and then he doesn't. But you get the tag at the end where he wakes up, and he's still alive. But not only do I think it's hopeful because the tone felt hopeful, but because it goes
The
to
music tells you it is, yeah.
it goes to the operating system afterwards, and it goes through the characters, and it's like, hey, okay, this one's complete. It's like the cube's like ticking off all of the people that it had in the cube, and it gets to the kid and it says, successful, subject released, which again further implies he wasn't just shot in the head after he got out. And then it goes to main character.
This Cube Zero slander.
And then it goes to the main. Well, the shot in the head thing's more Cube 2.
That was very Cube 2. But Cube 2 also was just a different kind of cube entirely. That it's so it's like its own thing.
Anyway, it gets to the main character Goto, and it says, subject continues, which was like, hey, there's still hope for him. He's not dead yet. And I think and I don't even think it's sequel bait. I mean, maybe they do want to make a sequel, maybe they will. I have no idea if they're going to. But I think this was just meant to be like, no, he still get a fighting chance, because the big moment, and like just before he, I think it's when he's fighting the killer, or just before that starts, we get like another part of the flashback again, because we got it earlier on where he comes home and it's like POV, and he sees his brother sitting at the dinner table and his brother looks really sad, and then we see all the other bits where his brother looks like he's bruised, and then obviously he's on the roof in the suicide bit. But at the end, or towards the end, just before he like starts really fighting the killer, he gets that flashback again, and he goes into the room, he looks at his brother who looks sad, but then his brother's face lights up, he smiles and says, oh, Goto, you're back. It was almost a little on the nose. It was basically saying he got his groove back, like he's himself again, and he's willing to fight for this kid. It's a bit on the nose, I'll grant you, but it's definitely meant to be this kind of like, no, he's like found his inner fire again. He's willing to fight for himself and for, you know, this kid who's his new surrogate brother and all that stuff. So I'm not saying that he definitely gets out after the ending, but like I think the movie wants it to be at least a little bit hopeful. Like, you know, maybe he can do this. Maybe he will get out.
Yeah.
You know? So it's absolutely the least nihilistic of all the Cube movies. There's no denying it.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, whether you think that's a good thing or not is completely, you know, that's a fair statement. It's a fair debate to be had. But like after 2 and 3 did the nihilism so poorly, where it just felt like a cheap, like, oh, we're just going to end it in a really depressing way because we don't know what else to do. It was just a refreshing change. Yeah, well, it was kind of like, I think I compared, when we talked about Cube Zero, I think I said it's kind of like how at the end of almost every found footage movie is the person holding the camera dying and the camera falls to the ground, and at a certain point
they had to find the footage.
Yeah, at a certain point I'm just like, please just have the twist be that it's not found footage. Like, it turns out it's just a footage movie, right? And the guy, whoever it was, survived, and they edited it into a movie, and that's them.
Mailed it to I don't know, a studio.
Like maybe you get to the end and the final scene of a found footage movie is actually it goes all, you know, scratchy, and then it like pulls
back from a TV, and then you see like the people saying, "This is where I last shot this image."
Oh no, I was going to say it cuts to like an interview of the cameraman being like, "Yeah, I got out, and this is all the footage that I got, and oh, that was really rough, but hopefully that you found that interesting, guys. Bye," or so, you know, something stupid like that. I would be endeared at this point, because they all end the goddamn same way. So I think I respected that.
Not the VHS movies.
I've only seen the first one. I can't comment on the rest. I've heard good things about the last two, but
yeah, I enjoyed the last one.
Yeah, but I'll you know, I'm sure me and Tim will do them on streams at some point.
94 was good too, and 99. I like most of them.
I think all of the ones that are named with years have been very well received. I think Viral was the one that everyone thought was bad, but I'm only going on zeitgeist here. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
So, I think the Cube remake's worth a watch. I think it does some interesting things that made me think of some other ideas and like other influences. And it's funny that the thing I'm comparing it to, Silent Hill, and specifically Silent Hill 2, didn't exist when Cube 1 came out. It's kind of funny that those ideas, maybe it's something culturally, because Silent Hill is a Japanese developed video game. It's entirely possible these ideas are just a part of Japanese culture, maybe in a way that's why they're popping up here in the same way. But regardless, I really, well, I won't say I really liked it because I don't think that's quite accurate. But I had a decent time. I enjoyed. I was interested in what it was doing, and I think it's worth a watch. I think it's better than the 2 sequels that we already had, but it doesn't touch the original because the original is actually such a great little low-budget social satire, and you can't escape the fact that half of this movie is just repeating things from the original, and it's inherently less exciting because of that. Like, I don't think you can escape that too much. So,
Nope.
Yes. So, I dread to think what you're about to rate this because you've been very passionate, and
I have poo-pooed this film quite a bit.
You have poo-pooed it.
Trying to think of what it deserves versus what I want to give it, but I don't have much time left on this show, so I'm just gonna give it a 3.
A 3?
I don't like it.
But a 3 is like that's like
I think it's
extra
a bad
rules
movie.
level of movie.
No, but those movies are good, and those movies are worth watching and entertaining, and most of them are 10s. But this one,
So you thought this was weaker than Cube 2? That's what you're saying here.
yeah, I said this was my least favorite.
Okay.
I would rank this one
Fair
last.
enough. Fair enough.
And Cube, I don't think I gave Cube a bad rating. I think you attack me because I didn't praise it as much, but I don't think I gave it a bad score.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you mad because someone keeps pestering you about a rating you gave one movie a couple of years ago? Where does that sound familiar, Tara?
Well, I mean, I just don't understand how you justify giving The Matrix a 9.5 instead of a 10, like what it deserves. Even after you called it a flawless masterpiece.
I don't know if those exact words came out of my mouth.
I'm pretty sure I'm quoting you directly.
I'm pretty sure the difference between you're mad at me from a 0.5 of a difference, where I am poking fun at you for only giving Cube what, like a 6.5 or something like that.
I think I gave it a 7.
Maybe you give it a 7. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe a 6.5 because I just didn't like it as much as I wanted to. But I mean, allegorically and the sci-fi stuff is great, and I think I mentioned that. It's just it wasn't as for me.
Okay. Well, there you go. Those are the Cube movies all done. Wrapped up, done, dusted. And if there's
Would you rate it?
Oh yeah, good question. I was thinking about this actually, quite a bit. I think I'm going to settle on a 6.5. I don't think it's quite at the level where I'd call it outright good, and therefore give it a 7. But I think it was an entertaining enough watch. I had a good enough time with it for what it was. And
I bet you never watch it again.
I mean, there's tons of 6s and 6.5s that I'll never watch again. That's not really saying it.
I mean, I don't think you found this entertaining enough to ever be like, I don't know. Maybe you would recommend it to someone who's a fan of Cube, but if someone was like, I'm interested in the Cube movie, but I only like modern movies, would you say, okay, watch this one?
I would never recommend it instead of the original Cube. That's an insane thing to suggest.
Yeah, I know, because it's not that good.
I think you're I may never watch it again, and I don't think that's necessarily it's absolute. You give it a 3. A 3 out of 10 is that's
a bad movie.
That's like Darkness Falls levels of just trash.
I don't know what that movie is, but it sounds like it's for me.
It's trash. I don't think this movie's trash. It's definitely not. It's just flawed. It's not perfect, but it's got some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, fair enough. Tara didn't come to play today, apparently. So here we are. That is our thoughts on the Cube Japanese remake from 2021. Next time, we've got a movie that Tara's probably going to praise to the high heavens, even though everyone on the planet thinks it's shit. And that is John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars, which was a vote winner. So
I've never seen this. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, we got.
Is it vampires? Or like, am I actually getting ghosts? Because that's what I want. I want people to go to Mars and all of a sudden it's haunted.
I have no idea, honestly. I don't even know why you're asking about vampires. Maybe that makes me think it is, and that's why you're asking that question. But I've never heard of it being vampires.
That would be really funny. If there are vampires on Mars, that would be the only thing that would make it better than ghosts. If it was called Ghost of Mars and they were actually vampires.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We've got about, what, 4 or 5 movies left with Tara, and then a countdown, and that's how we're wrapping stuff up. So look forward to that. I know David's delighted that you're doing Ghosts of Mars before he comes on, so he doesn't have to do it ever. So.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of stuff that I skipped and that you guys get to do together.
Oh, we're well aware. We're well aware of that, Tara.
Yeah. I haven't done any Shyamalan movies.
I mean, there's only a couple of those that would count as sci-fi, but one of which I like.
One of them's good.
I like Signs.
Me too. I think anyway. I liked it in the theaters. I haven't seen it since.
I'm not looking forward to watching After Earth, but I know we have to do it at some point. But it's
pretty sure The Happening is a sci-fi.
Yeah, kinda. It's just one of those kind of borderline things where I guess it is because it doesn't really fit anywhere else, but at the same time, it doesn't feel that science fiction-y either.
You guys could do it on Screams then.
I don't know. We've got more important things to do on streams. That's been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you get bonuses and all sorts of things for your troubles. Of course, Tara is leaving in about 4 or 5 episodes' time, and then is shifting over to David at that point. So you'll be getting David episodes starting around the end of November, start of December. So, you know, prepare for the transition. It'll be emotional, I guess. Fireworks, trombones. I don't know.
I don't know. You seem so conflicted.
Maybe some cake.
Oh, there will be cake.
Maybe some cake.
I ate 2 cakes today.
But that
Whole
is...
cakes. And
well,
there was cinnamon rolls. I mean, they're kind of cake-like.
I was picturing 2, like, you know, A3 size birthday cakes in my head when you said that.
Only on my birthday.
I was like, damn. Alright, that's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Like, subscribe, all the usual things. We appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.